Jimmy Lakey about to pick up. Oh my gosh. Listen to this.
Major League Baseball in 6 weeks. But after the completion of the game, he was out celebrating without a mask. Now, I want to remind you, and I'll talk about this later on. I'm going to go to Steve Laffey, who joins me every Wednesday morning at this time. Did you know the CDC does not count a positive test as a COVID test, as a COVID case? They say you only have an active COVID case if someone has a positive test and has symptoms. Other than that, you may have a positive test only because you might have had it a week or so ago and the antibodies are still there, so you're testing positive. So the CDC says you don't count the cases. You count people with the positive test plus the symptoms. That's a positive case. Just throwing that out there, that's the CDC. That'll get you. You quote the facts of the CDC rather than the facts that Jared Polis has created. You get banned on Facebook. Just pointing that out. So this guy had a positive test, no symptoms, and he got kicked out of the game last night. Anyway, the Dodgers win. World Series over with. All right, let me bring Steve Laffey in. Steve Laffey, his website, filmmaker, author. The primary mistake is his book, Fixing America, the movie.com. You can find the movie. Steve Laffey, let's see if we make it 2 weeks in a row without a disruption and disconnection. How are you?
Jimmy, it's so great. I didn't even know the world. I mean, did anybody watch the World Series? The ratings for all these things are so terrible, which is so great to see that people are refusing to do this. The third baseman gets out of the. I didn't know this. The stuff that you see is almost like a comedy show, except it's hurting children and young people so badly since March. Your children, my children, all the children, and it's a terrible thing to watch, Jimmy.
You know, it is, and I'm watching it again. I don't want anybody to get sick. I don't want any. I know there's people that are very prone to this virus being a very nasty thing for them. I get that, but I watch the hypocrisy, and we get lectured every day by the governor of the state of Colorado about this, and then he gets exposed, obviously, to the quarantine, to the COVID because of Mike Hoffman, and he gets a health department to say, yeah, but all that quarantine stuff we've been talking about is not applying to you. But you got the kids from Rocky Mountain High School, they're locked down until early November because, well, the rules that apply for them don't apply to Jared Polis, evidently. And it's hurting the kids. Not only are they half-assed back in the class most of the time, they get kind of sent home just it's just frustrating as heck, and it's bad for the kids.
And this is all the earmarks of a totalitarian to come state if we continue on this level. We have governors who don't obey their own rules or their laws. This is across the United States of America among Democratic governors. We have situations over and over again, just the refusal to call it by what it is, the refusal to punish communist China, but to say it's their fault. It makes no sense at all. This is our leaders. These are the old people. But the real thing that's happening in our country, and it's so difficult to watch, I have 6 children, is how much older people must really hate their children. I hate to say it any other way. No group of individuals would leave this country with a $3 trillion debt in 1 year. No group of people would propose for older people forbearance, which is happening in the country where people don't pay their credit card, people don't pay their mortgage, people don't pay their student loan. The president thought it was a great executive order. It was terrible. All these things are happening. And then when it comes to looking around the country for kids, either in elementary school, high school, college, what we have done to them, think of their memories of just wearing masks and so forth, even though they're not at risk. The young people don't get it. And think about the message it says to young people after all these years since the war on poverty that didn't cure poverty. Think of what the message really is. The message to every young person is, you can't take care of yourself. And older people are like, yeah, I guess we can't take care of ourselves. And kids, you can't take care of yourself. And I have to protect myself. I'm 60 years old. I'm overweight. I drink a lot. I have to protect myself. So screw you kids. That's what's going on in America. Isn't it, Jimmy? Isn't that what's really going on?
Yeah, a lot of, it's always for the children, but it's really not. It's really about dysfunctional adults and old people making decisions that affect the kids. You sent me a story that talks about how we're supposed to celebrate or commemorate or have fun on Halloween this weekend, and you highlighted
Yeah.
this story from the I think at Fort Collins, Colorado,
Yes.
and that they say if you're gonna go trick or treating, enjoy it from the safety of a car. And I'm thinking, really, this is what we're now telling kids. They can't go trick or treating, which, first of all, they have a mask on, usually, and you can't hand them a Kit Kat bar.
I just, Jimmy, it's just another example. These examples are all day long. They're on the radio, they're in the news. And the thought process that Halloween would be for being in a car and waving at some designs outside is bizarre. It's absolutely crazy to tell kids this and not let them just dress up like googlins and goblins or whatever kids do. I will tell you the other strange thing that I do see, Jimmy, regarding Halloween, and I'll just tell you all this. If you go by a house that goes well beyond what would be normal Halloween stuff, you know, some lanterns, a couple of ghosts, and so forth. When you go by and someone says, "I'm a witch" on the outside of the house with a sign, or you have really scary over the top things, it's 100% certain there's a Biden sign in the lawn sign on the grass. It just is. I mean, to my south in Linden Park, it's 100%. I walk through the neighborhood because I got to get steps to beat my kids, and the other ones that are normal either are they don't have Trump signs all of them. That's not the 100% certainty, but it's like 100% of how people think. If you're really into evil stuff, you've got a Biden sign with Harris on your lawn today. And keeping the kids from trick or treating is just brutal to even see that that parents all buy into it. That parents in a car with kids have their kids with masks on. When I was a kid, can I tell you one quick thing? At Parkview Junior High School, there was one kid whose parents made him ride in the back seat. He was a very smart kid, and I used to keep people from flipping his books, but he was really had problems because his parents treated him so indifferently. And he grew up to actually be somewhat successful, but always shy and, because his parents treated him like that. Showing up at Parkview Junior High School when your parents in the front and you're the only kid in the back seat, it was tough. This is what all the parents, not all, not you, Jimmy, but this is what many, and maybe most of the parents are doing to their kids today, destroying them.
Steve Laffey, my guest, his website is stevelaffey.com. Steve, let me switch gears here. Speaking of destroying things, it's happening nationwide. Governor Polis has done it here in Colorado. He signed an executive order and says, hey, if you're a renter and if you can show any hardship because of the COVID-19 crisis, you don't have to pay your rent, and your landlord, who may have a mortgage or a note on that rental property, he can't evict you. He or she can't evict you. And you sent me a headline. There's a Wall Street Journal. Mounting unpaid rent is risking a U.S. tidal wave of evictions, but landlords, property owners, are being told you can't evict your tenants. They haven't paid their bills. Doesn't matter. If they can show they got the COVID-19 impact somehow, they don't have to pay you. It's happening right here in Colorado if you're a property owner.
Yes, and this is why in February and March on your show, and to anybody who would listen, and nobody would, I said things like colleges should not only not send their kids home, they should keep them all summer long. I said everybody should go to work, and people like Steve Laffey, myself, should take care of their special problem within their family, that it's their responsibility, individual responsibility. Really old people at nursing homes need to take care of themselves. Nursing homes can make decisions about what to do about really old people. Really fat people should lose some weight and so forth. I mean, I hate to sound so crass about it, but that's what people have to take care of themselves. So instead, we became a nation of forbearance. And people may not even understand what I'm talking about. Forbearance is not forgiveness. Forbearance, when the president says, if you have employees, they don't have to pay their Social Security taxes, they can pay them in January. That means, okay, $3,000, half a year, $1,500. Somehow that $1,500 they have to come up with. You don't have to pay your rent because you can declare forbearance, but then you're going to have to pay your rent. Otherwise, what happens to the guy who owns the apartments? Not everybody is a publicly traded apartment community, right? Like Mid-America apartment communities that we took public years ago. It's not like that. A lot of people own 6 places or a condo or something, right? They can't evict people. They can't then not pay. They can't pay their mortgage on it, right? So now they're in forbearance, right? They're in forbearance with the mortgage company. So JP Morgan looks everybody in the eye and says, our earnings are X. we take some charges. But now they've got a real problem. Credit cards. Go online and look at your credit card. For months, every credit card said, hey, if you got a problem, let us know. You don't have to pay. Now, the credit card company, when you didn't pay, didn't declare that a bad loan. They declared it in forbearance. So everybody's pretending that everything's okay until one day, like in January, it's not. So we became a country of such short term and pretending things were okay since 1971 that this is sort of, I don't know if it's the last gasp, but this is just plain wrong to do. It would have been better to make everybody pay and stay at their jobs. We wouldn't have this problem. We wouldn't have China's economy growing, us complaining about China, their military getting stronger, and our economy stuck in the doldrums. We did this to ourselves, and it was old people. I mean, our age and my age and older. I'm not saying all 80-year-old people did this, but all older people did this to destroy the future of the country. We've been doing it for years with these budget deficits, right? We've been doing it for years with all our policies. We've been doing it for years by legalizing marijuana in Colorado. Did you know that in Pueblo, Colorado, in the whole county, half of the building has been for marijuana? And if you talk to an emergency room doctor, it's young people coming in with all these problems, psychotic breaks. We did it to ourselves, and it has to stop, Jimmy.
Steve Laffey, my guest. Steve, you sent me another story that you just shake your head and say, what are we doing to ourselves? It's from California, but I always pay attention to California because Colorado has a big case of California envy. I always say Boulder has a case of Berkeley envy, and they're always looking at what can we do to get more money. Headline, Californians weigh easing the long-time property tax cap. The government was capped on how much property tax, and Californians are actually thinking of removing that cap.
It's just so for people who don't know this, California had at least one thing going for you. You know, if you decide not to make a lot of money and stay in your home and you turn 65, you were like, okay, they could only tax your property at X, which was pretty low. Every other tax in California, the progressive income tax, which really relies upon Silicon Valley, okay, in Los Angeles, and giant amount of billionaires or multi-millionaires paying a larger share of the income taxes in California than any other state, including New York. But now they have on the ballot to take that away from people to make their property taxes look like New York, right? And so there are some states that have nothing going for them. New York, Rhode Island, they have high taxes on everything. And then some states have really good situations like Wyoming and Tennessee, no state income tax. And in California, it was always this thing that if you made like 50 grand, you could stomach it. I guess if you could fill up your gas tank at $4.50 a gallon, everybody else is at $2, you could stomach it. But now in California, they're trying to do away with that. I guess they want everybody to leave. And so when you look at California and you look what's happening in the country and you live sort of between them like we do in Colorado and we see it coming here, and you say to yourself, wow, if Joe Biden wins, I guess they'll merge Philadelphia and the riots and people killing each other over sneakers last night. They'll merge that with California and the Beirut, Venezuela sort of attitude of like, I have a friend who lives in a multi-million-dollar home and up north of San Francisco. They haven't had power for a couple of days. It's like rolling brownouts. When did rolling brownouts and shutting off people's power to avoid like electricity problems because you want to do everything with solar and nothing with nuclear? When did that become something that people embraced? So when that joins together, we'll have a whole country full of riots. And what we're ending up with, though, in all seriousness, we will end up at some point between now and 2024 with a country that a lot of people cannot live with the other side. And that's where we're heading right now, fast.
Yeah, I'm baffled. I hear this every year, and I hear this year that the California Electric Company has decided we have to do these rolling brownouts and blackouts because we don't want to overheat a line or break a line to spark forest. I'm like, well, why the people of California seem to live with that rather than requiring Gavin Newsom or suing the feds or whatever to do forest management and clean up the forest in a drought condition? They just say, well, I guess it's just part of the greater good. The governor gets to shut us down. He gets to quarantine us, and he can even make sure that our power gets turned off because it's all just for the greater good. People up within California It's almost like you kind of deserve what you're getting there because they tolerate this stuff year after year, and the government doesn't ever clean up the forest there.
Yeah, there's a couple of thoughts in that, and it's true. So last night, one of the other power companies, not PG&E, another one that's the fire in Irvine, where 90,000 people were evacuated, so they said they may have caused it. And I'm like, what? Like, Jimmy, that seems to be like it's 2020. They were causing it in 2010. Do they? You have to ask the question. Do they have like electrical boxes where like flares go off? I mean, is it like out of a comedy movie? What's going on in California? No one put caps on it where they would start the fire. Nobody did what we did in Colorado, which was put a lot of the power underground. Nobody did any of this. It seems to defy anything. And here's the other part. So if you live in Colorado, wherever you might live, I learned the hard way many times. I always thought that, like in business, like at Morgan Keegan, if we were having a bad month, instead of serving highfalutin sandwiches to people, we would serve peanut butter and jelly. I mean, I'm not joking. We would let people know we're not having a good month. We got to change, and we would get in a meeting. And Alan Morgan, we would change something to make money, right? But in politics, when you watch Detroit go 20 years, they know it go into bankruptcy. They go to zero. You watch hometown Cranston, Rhode Island, before he became the mayor, becomes zero. People in towns and cities and states do not necessarily change, Jimmy. They let it go to zero. And the reason is that many of the people want to live like that. They want to bring you down. When you think of what's really going on in California or what's happening with the Democratic Party, they're the same kids who didn't want you to succeed, Jimmy, or the people listening when you were growing up. They hated that you won a prize. They hated a blue ribbon. Whereas people like us, we love it. Hey, the guy got a blue ribbon. This guy's a chess champion. We love that, people being successful. They hate it. They want to destroy you.
Steve Laffey, always a pleasure. Your website, stevelaffey.com, stevelaffey.com. 2 weeks in a row, Steve, we made it, and we're still
I love it. I love it. Thank you, Jimmy. He shut me up. So anyway, that is the case. When you think about, I just think about Shore Avenue, and I just saw the picture of the Nichols family with Mrs. Nichols in Florida, and it was just wonderful to see. She's a great lady. She's actually in my movie for like a scene. And before that, the Bennetts lived there. They were the sort of the root, the rocks of the neighborhood across the street. But I grew up with where, at least it wasn't in my household per se, and which was unfortunate. But at least around me, there were people who like wanted to succeed, and you could see success. You know, in the Bennett family, right? You could see Kurt Bennett, oh, he's playing in the NHL, and you were like, wow. And I knew I wasn't going to play in the NHL. Couldn't afford any skates. But you see people like that, and you can grab a hold of them. And that's what we have to stop from fading away. But in California and in much of where I'm from in Rhode Island, it's fading away, or it's faded away. And people want to like grab other people and hold them down under the water, figuratively and somewhat literally, under the water, so they're not successful. And that's the battle. That's the battle of Christianity versus Islam, right? Christianity wanting people to succeed and go to heaven, and Islam wanting to tear people down and chop off their limbs, and subjugate especially women to wearing, heavy clothes over them in 90-degree weather. And that's the battle since Ishmael. And so anyway, I'll leave you with that, and I'll get back to what I got to do today.